Hello there. This is meant to be the video to follow up the FeelGood class in which we cover the FeelGood technique. Um, so what hopefully you can do is use this as a kind of guidepost for your own practice and also a little bit of a review for what the technique is. So far we've covered techniques in 3 of the 4 quadrants of unified mindfulness. And the way that the different techniques are organized in those 4 quadrants are reflected by the ways that those quadrants are named. So the first is the appreciate quadrant, within which we did the see, hear, feel practice and also the feel, rest practice. So that appreciate quadrant is simply observing and receiving and doing our best to investigate and appreciate what we experience. And the transcend quadrant is what we moved into when we got to feel flow. That transcend quadrant is aimed toward experiencing or making contact with something beyond ordinary sense experience. Just kind of noticing the different qualities of sense experience that we might not always notice, like its ever-changing nature, as in feel flow. We also did a technique from the express quadrant, or the spontaneity quadrant, with auto move, where we just let, or auto walk more specifically, where we let our body begin to walk or to move, and then we focus on the quality of just happeningness that occurs there, the spontaneous, automatic nature of so much of our movements. And there are other techniques in each of those quadrants highlighting the same sorts of qualities, but working with different parts of our experience. And in the final quadrant that we're going to talk about today, the nurture positive quadrant, this is a set of techniques that is a little different than the other 3 quadrants we've touched on. The first 3 quadrants are, the techniques within them are geared toward observing without changing or manipulating necessarily. So even with the auto move, we're kind of just letting our body move and we're sort of watching it move. And in this nurture positive quadrant, we're actually intending and making effort to cultivate or build positivity. And we do that still with this see, hear, feel model. So we're working with see, hear, feel in the thoughts and emotions through mental image, that's see in, mental talk, that's hear in, and emotional body sensation, that's feel in. Okay? So we're narrowing our focus to just focusing inward on thoughts and emotions. And specifically with the technique feel good we'll cover today, we're just narrowing it down to the cultivating positive emotional body sensations. We'll talk about how to do that and actually do some practice here in a minute. So this is a unique set of techniques because it's not only what typically mindfulness is kind of thought of as just accepting what is, right? Not intending to change or to manipulate at all. And that's a huge part of what mindfulness practice is about. However, there is also room for us to move toward improving while we observe non-judgmentally. And that is a sort of enigmatic balance where I'm meeting my experience exactly as it is with full acceptance and love toward it, while also moving myself toward improvement. And so given how we're kind of using this with the see, hear, feel model, it's also good to notice that we're trying to improve in really specific ways. You can think of A, B, C, and D. So A is affect. We're trying to improve our emotional state or our emotional habits, so to speak. B is behavior. We can target or narrow in on really specific behaviors, compulsive behaviors, for instance, addictive behaviors, problematic reactive behaviors. C, we can focus on cognitions. And in cognitive behavioral therapy, that kind of translates to what are called cognitive distortions or thought errors. So working our habits of thinking to promote more effective ways, patterns of thinking. And then for D, we could think of ideal. So what that kind of points to is an overall image of oneself that is generally improved. And you can think of ways you can work with that are important figures who you look up to, for instance, people who you just feel embody goodness. And that could go very deep into even the most deep religious figures of your particular faith, for instance, in addition to just kind of archetypes of goodness, figures who you aspire to be. And in that case, you might work with all three of the sense categories of see, hear, and feel. But in this particular practice of feel good, we're narrowing in on just the feel and just affect. So we're focusing on emotional quality type body sensations and their quality of positivity that they may have. So ways to do this. There's a pretty useful mnemonic device in Unified Mindfulness to help us get started with trying to figure out how to cultivate positive emotion. Seems like a hard thing to do. If I feel really, really bad, if I feel very negative, a lot of negative emotion, how do I tap into something else, something more positive? I'm going to run through these different options, and it's kind of a lot to work with all at once. So I'd advise you to just think about what grabs your attention as I describe these several options, or a couple of them. And then when we practice, I'll try to make mention of them so you can utilize them in our formal sitting time today. So the mnemonic device is the word feasts, okay? Feasts. And each of these letters symbolizes a certain way we might cultivate positive emotion in the body. So F, the first, is to find it. Sometimes we just happen to have positive emotion already there, even if we're feeling negative emotion too. So there may be kind of tightness in the chest, but with anxiety or worry or something. But there also might be a kind of deeply settled sense of contentment in the stomach. And that's a hair-splitting kind of subtle detection, but there may be positive emotion in the body already. Or if sometimes physical relaxation actually can induce a little bit of positive emotion, and if you find that your arms are pleasantly relaxed and there's no emotion there, or there's no tension there, and that kind of has a positive emotional glow to it, you can focus on that. So that's find it. You can also evoke it. And evoking means that we're using our thoughts, positive mental image, positive mental talk, to evoke positive emotion in the body. And anytime that you experience positive emotion in the body through this practice, you can think of it as like striking a bell, the bell of positive emotion, and then as it resonates or rings, you just stay with it, doing your best to infuse it with concentration and clarity and equanimity, the three skills of mindfulness that we're focused on. And then when it passes, simply let it pass and strike the bell again. So that's the repetitive motion of this practice. So evoking is simply conjuring a pleasant thought, either thoughts you hear, thoughts you see. It might be that you picture someone you love, recite a few times a positive affirmation to yourself, something like that, and then notice how it resonates in the body in positive emotion. Okay. The A is to activate it. Sometimes some lucky people can just kind of hit the positivity switch in the body, and by doing so, just deciding to feel more positive emotion in the body, sometimes you can do that, and it's worth experimenting with, kind of hitting that positivity switch, noticing where it rises in the body, and then focusing on it with the three skills of mindfulness. So the 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 first S in feasts is to support it. So what you might try is to slide into feel rest or feel flow for a few moments and allow the restful quality of the body or the undulatory or vibratory movement of the body through feel flow to kind of support a good positive sense of well-being in the body. And that could be a way you strike the positivity bell and stay with it. So the T is to trigger it, and trigger practice can be with pleasant experience and unpleasant experience. In this case, we're using it with pleasant experience. If you're vacationing at the beach, that'd be a good chance to sitting out and looking on from the shore on the sunset or whatever, some pleasant scene. And if you're there, you're letting sights and sounds and physical touch in that scene trigger positive emotion in the body. Another way to do it that you might experiment with in your own day-to-day life is using music. Choosing like making a playlist, for instance, of music that makes you feel good. And simply, rather than diving into the music, letting it reverberate through you and noticing and staying with positive emotional sensations in the body as a part of meditation practice. That's the way you can meditate with music, using it as a positive emotion trigger. So the final S, final letter in feasts, is to show it. And you don't have to show positive emotion in this bubbly, excessive way, although you can, but simply drawing the corners of the mouth up into the shape of even a subtle smile, letting the kind of crow's feet begin around the eyes, and letting positive emotion begin to be expressed on the face. And it doesn't even have to be outwardly obvious. You can kind of have an inward smile. But if you do happen to broaden your face and let your face brighten and light up more visually, that you might notice that as you do that, it impacts the way that the body feels within. So I know for me, if I even let a small expression of a smile on the face, I kind of notice a warmth in the chest, a kind of glowing feeling in the stomach, and it could be very, very subtle. But subtle's enough to work with, and that's something you should keep in mind throughout this whole practice. Sometimes when you open yourself up to exploring the cultivation of positive emotion, you might notice the opposite. You might notice a lot of negative emotion, and that's just okay. You have choices. You can either work with the subtle positivity that you can find, or just stay open and tuned into it, or you can switch techniques and work with the negative emotion itself, using see, hear, feel, using feel rest, for instance, to try to just kind of cool down. So there's a lot of options there that I'll try to remind you of as I guide you through this. So I don't want to talk too much, but so we'll dive into a feel good practice. Just a reminder of a brief set of instructions. Do your best to be open to or to create in some way positive emotion in the body, positive emotional sensations in the body, and treat that as though you're ringing the bell of positivity. And then as it reverberates within your body, as those positive emotion sensations sustain in your body, for as long or short as they do, just stay with them and bring to them as much of the mindful qualities of concentration, clarity, and equanimity as possible. And then when they dwindle or wither and pass, just let them do that. You don't have to use labels for this practice. Just do your best to stay with positive bodily feeling in the body, and as long as it lasts. And then when it passes, ring the bell again. You can use one of the options I mentioned, and do your best to reactivate the positive emotion in the body. You're kind of sensitizing yourself to when positive emotion shows up, and then staying with it again and again and again. Okay? So let's do a 10-minute practice period now, as I'll give you some light guidance while we go, and then you can use this as a way of keeping yourself in tune with this practice as you try to keep it as a part of your day. Okay, so go ahead and find a good posture that suits you, and I've heard it put well recently, a just right posture for your body. And let your spine stretch up and your muscles relax around it. And we'll have one bell to begin, one bell to end. So as you notice your body settling into its posture, you may have some locations of the body that are still settling, and that's fine. But as you let your body settle into relative stillness, whenever you're ready, do your best to find or create some sort of positive emotional sensation anywhere in the body. You may notice it already present in some location of the body, in the stomach, the chest, the face. Anywhere's fine. Or you may notice a lot of other less pleasant sensations, which is fine too. If that's the case, you can use one of the options I mentioned earlier to try to create positive emotion in the body. Using positive mental image or mental talk, pleasant sights or sounds around you, any experience of rest or flow in the body. Or you could also just let a slight smile begin to grow on your face. And as you make any of these subtle efforts, notice how positive emotion, however subtle, may show up at different places in the body. And as that good feeling arises, again, however small, do your best to soak yourself into it and stay with it as long as it lasts. And then, as it passes, do your best to release it with some gratitude. And then do your best to strike the bell of positive emotion again. Repeat this process again and again, striking the bell of positive emotion, noticing where it is in the body and staying with it as it resonates. And then as it begins to shrink or fade and eventually pass, give it full permission to do so. And then strike the bell again and repeat. Try to be open to and curious to the sensations of good feeling in the body. And if you notice an ability to stay with it and even let that positive feeling grow, to feel more of the body, you can do that. But remember, when it begins to fade, don't fight with that fading. Just let it pass, watching it the whole way. And then find or create positive emotional sensation in the body again. It may be subtle. Subtle is enough. If at any time you feel at all pulled more overwhelmingly to negative emotion, just remember that's sometimes happens, and that's okay. You always have the choice to switch to another technique if you choose to. If you are able to contact positive emotion and let it fill your body, you also may experiment with letting that positive emotion spread farther out from where your body is. Letting it radiate around you, as it were. Filling the room, filling the space where you are. Or maybe sending that positive emotion to other people. Do your best to experiment with these options. Striking the bell of positive emotion in the body. Staying with it as long as it sustains. And then give it full permission when it's ready to fade and to pass. Try to be curious about the specific location of positive sensations, positive emotion. And as we conclude this practice in a moment, do your best to stay in touch with the possibility of emotion. It's positive, arising in the body. And try to bring it forward with you throughout your day, each time you notice it. Okay, hopefully this was or could be helpful for you to use as a practice tool. Sorry, this is a little longer than the normal ones, but hopefully it was clear and helpful. And feel free to reach out to me if you have any questions or clarifications. Have a good one.